It's Footlong Nation Appreciation, and Subway is thanking Footlong fans by giving away thousands of prizes every day, plus free Footlongs for life. Get your codes on 30-ounce drinks and Doritos Nacho Cheese Chips to play and win big. Subway, where winners eat.
The B.S. Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The B.S. Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the B.S. Report, a sunny Tuesday here in Southern California. We're going to talk NBA with somebody who has somehow never been on the B.S. Report, the real commissioner of the National Basketball Association from the Boston Globe, Bob Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing fine, Bill. What's up?
Lin-sanity.
Yes.
You were the first person in America to make the Billy Ray Bates comparison. How proud are you?
Extremely. But that's my role. That's my role in this society now. And young whippersnappers like you dominate in the 90s and the 21st century, and I claim proprietorship of the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
So we have – who are the predecessors here? Because I would throw Flip Murray in here, too. Flip Murray had like a crazy 10-game run out of nowhere. But who are some of the other people who came just out of nowhere?
Remember, this is just if we're going to try to keep this to guys who once a season was well in progress appeared out of nowhere, it's a very short list. It's a very, very short list. I mean, there are people who have starts maybe, but we're talking about this thing, the season's in progress, and then out of the sky or up from the swamp, we are presented with this a phenomenon. And the first thing I thought of was Billy Bates back in the 78-79 season, and I can't think of another analogy that even comes close to what Lin is doing right now.
But this doesn't feel like a fluke. I wrote this on Friday. At the very least, he's been unleashed. I think his worst case scenario for an NBA career is he's J.J. Barea. He's a third guard off the bench who creates offense and is hit or miss, streak shooter. And that's his worst case scenario, but he actually might be a starting point guard just because of the way he runs the high screen, how smart he is, he can shoot. What am I missing?
No, what you're missing is the fact that there aren't many coaches that are like Mike D'Antoni. I think that is the ultimate key to this. I think that he found himself in the right place at the right time with the right guy, and they were in the right time being the desperation of the New York Knicks that caused D'Antoni to give him a shot in the first place. But after all, he was hanging around for a couple of weeks without getting that proper shot. But when they finally got desperate, they used him. But I do believe this league is it's better than it was 10 or 15 years ago in terms of coaches who have some kind of an offensive feel and vision and interest, but not enough yet so that there wouldn't be plenty of places where he would still be buried or never even be looked at because of this nature of his play would irritate the coach. And instead, the nature of this guy's play excites the coach.
And also, not a lot of people have mentioned the Tyson Chandler component to this. There's no better teammate for him for these little high screen things.
No, it's good. No, it's all set up, and now, of course, we're all waiting to see the next phase, which is the full implementation with Mr. Anthony, and I'm not worried about it, but nobody's worried about his compatibility with Stoudemire. But and Anthony is a pick and roll guy, but the problem is just Anthony's willingness to share the ball in general terms and try to be that kind of a guy with this team now and share some spotlight with this kid. That's his task.
Are you pro Carmelo, anti Carmelo, or neutral?
I'm neutral, leaning towards an anti. In other words, I'm not violently anti. I recognize his great one-on-one ability, and I saw him win a championship in college, and so you got to feel that it's something was there that enabled him to play with other people properly. But he's been indulged. He's been indulged in his career to allow to play the game the way he does. He is a superb guy doing that one-on-one, clear-out thing. There's no question about it. And but there's more to the game, and I think he ought to study a few other people if he wants to broaden his game. It is possible for a player of his age, at his age, to change his game to a degree, and I think Paul Pierce is Exhibit A for him. That's blueprint I would study if I were him. The Paul Pierce who, when Rondo went down, was able to average 8 or 9 assists a game. I don't think Anthony's mind could even encompass that right now.
When we're talking about the Knicks and you think, like, what happened on Friday night? Like that, I don't know. Did you watch the game live?
No, I still haven't seen it, this whole thing. So I'm anxious to see it, but I haven't had an opportunity. So
just that building it really felt like a Game 7 of a playoff series in there. And you think, like, you know, what I grew up with and what you had when you were covering the league in the 70s and 80s. And is there another building that could happen in at this point? All these other buildings have been kind of knocked out.
How starved those basketball savants, if you will, are for something exciting. They spend this incredible amount of money, and they have this eternal optimism that something will happen. And then they have another part of some of them is this religious devotion. It's almost like, you know, I used to always like to kid about, you know, Catholics growing up, and you don't go to church because you want to. You go to church because you're afraid, you know, you get struck dead if you don't, and that's the way it's presented to you. And the Knicks, some of these rich Knicks basketball fans with their long histories, they fall into that category. So to have something to cheer about at this nature, I mean, especially the latent resentment of the ownership, you know, and I thought it was a great piece by Phil Mushnick yesterday in the Post pointing out how this is utterly antithetical to everything that James Dolan has stood for in his whole stewardship of his team. Is a bargain basement guy being the star that isn't some, you know, all this stuff comes into play somehow. Oh, I know, you're right. To cite the Garden, it is a special place. I lived through wonderful times with the covering games in that building in the 70s and even in the Van Gundy era, in the late 90s and it's been a long time since I've had a chance to really cheer like that. Allow us to say one thing. I was there last year, Bill, when the Celtics played that game with a wonderful one-point game, which when Stoudemire threw it in after the buzzer, it would have won the game, but it was late, and that's before they, you know, and that team, I said, hey, this team, they got something good going here, you know, and then they, you know, in a sense, you can argue that they messed it up with Anthony, or you can argue that, you know, they did what they had to do, but that building rocked that night and reminded me of what it can be like.
I'm still pro Carmelo trade, although I hate admitting defeat ever. But I just feel like you watch what happened with Dirk last year in the playoffs, and if you have a guy who can score whenever he wants at any big moment of a game, that's probably the biggest asset you can have in the NBA right now. And Carmelo can do that. So the goal is, how do you build the right kind of team around him? And this has been a poorly put together team for the most part. They finally have a decent point guard now, and the team's fallen into place. But just the idea of just building a front line and not even considering the backcourt, it's kind of antithetical to where the game is kind of headed in the 2010s here. You need a point guard to succeed.
There's so many exciting point guards in the league. I don't know if I might go so far as say golden age of point guard. I don't know. I think we might be. It's just an awful lot of guys that can do stuff. All right, and for them to sit around and hope that their savior was going to be Baron Davis, I found that rather amusing. And now how that's going to play out, how they're going to, you know, I think they might be in a position now. Hey, Baron, take your time now. Don't come back before you're ready.
Right.
One of those deals. I don't think there's any need to rush him back now.
And he, you know, really hasn't had a relevant basketball moment for 4 years.
No.
So,
and you know, the Peter Vesey theory, which I read a few months ago, was that he thought it might work only because Baron Davis, when he's bored and doesn't think the team has a chance to do anything, he mails it in as he, you know, did in L.A. You know that. And and when he's engaged, he's a totally different player. And he thought that this Knicks team would get him engaged. And we still haven't had a chance to see him in action, so we don't know which Baron Davis we're going to get. But right now, there's no urgency to see that Baron Davis.
I am a 100% subscriber to that theory, and personally went to probably 4 or 5 games where they had a terrible team. There was a big opponent like a Miami or like Boston during the, you know, heat of the KG era, things like that, and Baron was the best guy on the floor. The crowd was into it, and he rose to the occasion. But he is not somebody that you want playing in Charlotte on a Monday night in front of 8,000 people. that's when he checks out and he just doesn't care. But if the crowd's there, he does show up. Let's talk about the Celtics quick. Rondo, doesn't make the All-Star team and then comes out on Sunday and just eviscerates the Bulls. And it was one of those performances that make you think, on the one hand, like, yeah, you can't trade this guy because he can do this. And on the other hand, you're thinking, yeah, but he doesn't do this all the time. And if he played like this all the time, we would never consider trading him. Where do you stand on this?
Yeah, that's very true. He's really a difficult thing to assess because it's all about the head. We know that the uneven nature of his game is kind of a given, and it gets incrementally a little bit better. He actually made 4 key free throws in a row in that game, which was almost a breakthrough. And he jump shot goes out with a little more regularity than it once did, but it's still the core of his game. We know has not changed. Essentially, it's an amazing guy going to the basket, and it's about the head, the strings. He's not talking. He didn't talk after that game. I've never gotten a specific from Doc about it, what it is like to coach him, but it's certainly a challenge. And he's just a differently wired young man. I mean, I think he's bright, but he's calculating. He's sensitive. I think he takes slights, manufactures them, that kind of thing. I mean, he's a very complicated person. And you're right, it makes it very difficult to assess what you want to do with him because I think you've identified how the nature of his contribution, and it's not as consistent as you'd like it to be. But if they do trade him, and how can it be for anything other than another point guard? What are they going to do? Then again, it depends on what your goal, what you think how you're planning your future. Danny's still right now. They still got the old guys. They're still going to go to battle with this group in hopes that they can get lucky and when they get to the playoffs. And that seems to still be the plan. That could change. We haven't hit the deadline yet, and that Danny is the most unpredictable and fearless general manager in the entire league. So you have to fasten your seatbelt as we approach the trading deadline.
Well, there's 2 separate issues here. The first is, can they compete with what they have and actually win the title potentially with a tweak? I would say no. I don't think this team has what it takes. No. Right now, let's start with the immediate goal. Try to finish 6th and avoid Miami and Chicago in the first round. To me, that's the goal. No other goal has any relevance, and I guess the target team would probably be Orlando. I guess. They're so uncertain right now. Although I have no respect for the Hawks. I mean, I just can't wait for them to get in the playoffs again and then be humiliated like the dogs they've been for the last couple of years again. They're just ridiculous, really and truly. And Joe Johnson is the whole symbol of it all. But I got no respect for them. But they can win enough regular season games. Get in the playoffs. And anyway, the Celtics need to finish higher than 7th because if they don't finish higher than 7th, it's maybe 5 games if they're lucky, no matter which one of those 2 they play. So we both agree they can't win the title with what they have. Then why wouldn't you blow it up? Or why wouldn't you maybe trade Rondo in a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 or use like the value that he has right now and try to turn it into something?
Well, I don't know what that is. I'm going to battle. I'm not as day-to-day conscious or studying the league with the kind of intensity I once did to even be able to formulate a trade. That's why I read you. You go on trade deals, so that's good. No, you do all the heavy work, and I just say, hey, that's a good idea, or that sucks, and that's good.
Right.
I mean, I used to be, I'm kind of winding down. I fully admit that. But so if you present me with something, I'll go, yeah, that sounds good. But I'm afraid I'm too lazy to do the work to figure it out for myself.
Well, let's say here's something I wrote Friday that seemed to get people at least intrigued. So we know that Houston loves Pau Gasol and was willing to overpay for him. We know the Lakers need a point guard. Could there be a potential deal where you take, Luis Scola and Kyle Lowry and something else come to the Celtics? Mm-hmm. Rondo goes to the Lakers with Jermaine O'Neal, and Gasol goes to Houston.
Yeah, maybe if they throw in, if the Celtics can get it, maybe, kind of weasel a pick out of it too would be good.
Right.
Just for the hell of it. Weasel a number 1 out of it. And that's an interesting, as soon as you said Houston, I said, ooh, Kyle Lowry. Yeah. He's much better than I thought he was going to be.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I thought I frankly didn't think he'd make the league.
Really?
Anyway, I didn't. The Villanova team with all those guards, he wasn't. I thought he was, not that he was just too small. I just didn't get it. I didn't see it, and I'm happy, been proven wrong. But anyway, Kyle Lowry is good. And
well, it does worry me, the strategy of, all right, we're going to go into the rest of this decade, and Rondo is going to be our signature guy. Because
that's the given until further notice. That's where they are. And
that's
right,
not a good place.
Not the most reliable. You don't feel real comfortable with that. I totally agree. It's a shame because when he does things, God, isn't he fun? Oh my God! I've been watching this league, as you know, officially 43 years, and before that, going back and when I got to school in '64 and started going to games here, and there's nobody like him. I mean, he is absolutely sui generis in how he goes about his business, and he has so much fun when it's going well. It's just it's an amazing thing to watch. But as you said, the butt, we know what the big butt is. So why we don't get it often enough, and why that is a perplexing thing. And do you want to live with this and make him your signature guy? I mean, that's a very serious question. I know. I'm sure they keep asking themselves that. I'd like to think they ask themselves this question on a daily basis.
What do you think about the Pierce situation? Because he clearly wants to retire as a Celtic. And as a Celtic fan, I want him to retire as a Celtic. But you never know in this league. And maybe there's about 7 playoff teams right now that Paul Pierce could upgrade. There's no question. Yep. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, I know. That's what the sentiment, if Red were here, you know the answer. You found that out.
Yep.
Danny, you know the famous telling anecdote that Danny.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, Red had trades they could have had a trade for Bird, and he could have had a trade for McHale, and this hard-bitten Danny Ainge said, you didn't do it, what's the matter with you? Well, he didn't do it, and especially the McHale one. You couldn't trade Larry. That's just, I think you and I are on the same page with it. That's
no way, ever.
Beyond unthinkable. But Kevin,
yep.
It would be sad and it would be tough, but you'd do it. I would have done it.
Well, that Shrimp Perkins trade for McHale really would have been a good trade for the Celtics.
Yeah, it would have been.
Really.
Especially Kevin didn't have that much left either. If they really wanted to run on, Anyway, Paul Pierce really, really wants to be, and they feel, and they appreciate the loyalty, and they appreciate the fact that at a point in his career when they sucked and that he did not ask to get out of here, didn't pull that common, almost guaranteed new modern athletes thing, no matter what the sport is. They played 3 or 4 years, and now they decide they got to be on a championship team and pull and do that. He never did that. And he said, "Give me help," begging for help, and they did, and he got his reward. But it's just I thought, let's just examine the big three and one by one. They really would hate to screw him in a sense. Although if they put him in a position to get a ring, that wouldn't exactly be screwing him, would it? They think about it. Secondly, there's Garnett, and there's no sentiment with him because he has none for you. So don't worry about
True.
that. He has none. And now there's the Ray thing. And the mitigating factor with Ray that I think is important, and I don't know, is the sun and the proximity to Jocelyn diabetes, and is as good a place as there is in the world. And to trade Ray away from that, it was leaving the family would almost certainly have to stay here. It would be tough, and yet Ray still has. You talk about a final piece of a puzzle for somebody that could upgrade the team in that position. Ray could do that, and certainly is viable. And so that you got to think about it, I guess. But
Ray is like, if I'm Oklahoma City and I can somehow get Ray and I can rent him for 3 months and give up a draft pick and some expirings, and now I'm putting him out on the floor with Westbrook, Harden, Ibaka, and Durant, and that's my crunch time 5. I win the title with those 5 guys.
Well,
I really think that.
I don't see how, as much as we love them and they're fun, and Durant's his wonder and all that, they got 3 guys who can score. And it just isn't enough. I don't think that. And the Harden's the only other scoring option they really have, and they certainly need another scorer. Yes, I think that team would be very, very, very difficult.
Because right now they play Ibaka and Perkins together, which I just don't like because neither of those guys can score. Yeah, I think you have to pick one in crunch time. I don't think you can play both of them. It's just too predictable. It's basically the same issue the Celtics have. The really smart teams just play 5 feet off Rondo. Like, if you want to beat us with Rondo shooting wide open 19-footers, go ahead. But we're going to give them to you. And Rondo won't shoot them. And it's just over and over again. You see the Celtics just flounder in the last 5 minutes of these games. I don't see how that's going to get better. You called Pierce the best scorer in Celtics history.
Pure, yeah. Use that.
Best pure scorer. Explain that, because I always felt like Bird's hottest day is always going to be better than Pierce's hottest day.
in terms of very simple. I mean, I think it's very it's easy to explain. But by that I meant he has more different ways of getting the ball in the basket than any Celtic has ever had. He doesn't ever need a pick, first of all. So Larry did at times. There were guys Larry couldn't always get his shot. There's certainly not a shot that he really wanted to take when he wanted to take it at times against certain people. There's no question about it. It's obvious but Pierce doesn't have that problem. Pierce can always. It may sometimes, by degrees, he gets it better in more in happier spots than other times. But when he goes to that step back move, that stutter step back move, he gets a shot off all the time. And then you throw that in, he's a driver. He's a great old fashioned driver right out of every 1950s manual. He's a modern player because he's got excellent 3-point range. He's strong enough to take a hit and make the conventional old-fashioned 3-point play, and whether it's a mid-range jumper or going to the basket. And he's a pretty good free throw shooter. I mean, not 90, but he's good. And that's about pretty. And it pretty much sums up scoring, although throwing offensive rebounding. But he's the best. I mean, Havlicek was a move without the ball guy, totally. I mean, he didn't even want to make a play for himself if he didn't have to. He could grudgingly do it, but he didn't really want to. And Bird, we all have a firm image of Bird, and we know that he had to work hard against certain guys, and other guys he could just destroy, and most people he could destroy, but certain people no. I just think to me was evident. And I wrote this after he had come up with a 40-point game at Indiana in the playoffs 10 years ago, in which he had a lot of free throws, like 15 or 18 free throws, and it was a performance it's where I first started thinking about him in terms of the best combination of old and new in this league, because there were elements of the 50s and elements of the 21st century in the game that very few people have. And the other guy that is in that class, a little bit less. I mean, he never had. Is Ginobili. Ginobili is the other guy in my that I put in that category of the great combination of the old and the new.
Oh, that's interesting. I went on SportsCenter after Pierce broke the record. They asked me to do my top 10 Celtics of all time. Mm-hmm. And, obviously Russell was first. Obviously. I don't see how any list can not have him first. And what's amazing to me is, I never saw Russell either. I was born in 1969. I think he had been retired for 3 months. But what's amazing to me is like the under 25 generation just being perplexed that Russell would be first. Like, wow, I can't believe you didn't put Bird. Like, can you just take 30 seconds to explain what it was like to see Russell play live?
I can explain it from the viewpoint, first of all, as somebody who arrived in Boston in 1964 as a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers and a detester of all things Boston, and became a college student here. And so let's go to those games, and for the first, although those 4 years of school, I went to those games rooting fervently against the Boston Celtics, any game I went to, and rooting for the Lakers or the 76ers or whoever it happened to be, but mostly those were the games we went to. And the frustration of playing against this guy who's the greatest shot blocker of all time in terms of not only the timing and the physical act of doing it and keeping it in play, which was his specialty, but the psychological games he could play with people and allowing people to do stuff in the first 40 minutes of a game and then not allowing them to do it in the last 8 or 44 and 4, whatever the case may be, or maybe of discouraging guys by blocking the first 3 times they had the ball to take them out of the game, all that stuff. The rebounding, the running the floor. I mean, it was just. It was just demoralizing. I mean, and my contention is this, that if he were dropped out of the sky today as the same physical being, 6'9", 225 that he was so far ahead of his time athletically. You talk about athleticism. People think it was a province of it started with Dr. J or somebody. Well, I could put together a team of guys who played the preponderance of their career in the 60s who contain a high degree of athleticism and I believe could play very comfortably with the best players of today, and he would be at the top of the list, and of course Wilt would be there too. But he could compete in today's game. He would certainly lead the league in 2 categories without any question if he chose to do so, rebounding and shot block. He would be the best rebounder and the best shot blocker in the game today. And he wouldn't win 11 championships in 13 years because the road to championships is infinitely tougher now than it was, but he'd win more than anybody else, and that team would be built around him. He was just the combination of talent and intellect and psychology has never been surpassed. The only person that the obvious person that you would cite to below center would be Michael, because Michael's will to win and his competitiveness are unequaled and all that. But Bill, the record just speaks for itself, and I'll say it again. When you combine all the NBA 7th and 5th games, best of 5, you combine every NCAA every NCAA game is a winner-take-all, and all Olympic medal round games are a winner-take-all. And he played in 21 of them, and he was 21-0. I think there was a cause and effect for those teams.
I would say. So you have Bird second and Havlicek third.
I get Havlicek third, and Cousy has to, you have to give him his due. It was a totally different era, but historical importance, saved the team. There would be no Celtics for Russell to have come to play. Cousy kept them afloat fan-wise and made them viable. The few fans they had came to see Bob Cousy. Plus, he was the acknowledged playmaking whiz of the time, and still runs a fast break in a way very few guys do today. Yes, now comes the fun time. Who do we put 5? And that's where Pierce comes into the equation, because prior to that, I would have said have McHale. Of course, I'm a big Cowens guy, but I would have put McHale, longer career, but now we got Pierce, and I can't leave him out of the top 5. I don't see how I can possibly do that.
Right. So you'd put him over Sam Jones, McHale, and
I love
Cowens.
Sam, and I think Sam's one of the most underrated players in the history of basketball, which just only speaks to the depth of the Celtics. Celtics tradition. That's what it speaks to. If you put Sam in today's game, and I gave you, or if I gave you a scouting report on Sam Jones as a draftee, and I said, there's a guy out there. He's 6'4". He's a great middle distance shooter. He has an extraordinary first step, get to the basket at will. He's a great finisher. He's a great clutch shooter. He can defend, and he keeps his mouth shut, and you don't even know he's around. So he's a teammate, and he's a coachable guy. And you say, my God, this is the top 5 pick. Well, yeah, he would be at least, and that's Sam Jones. And Sam Jones played in an era when the first and the 2 guards occupying the first and second team, first 2 spots on the All-League team for 10 years running were Oscar Robertson and Jerry West, so nobody was going to argue about that. And then you got Hal Greer and Rennie Wilkins, and you got Sam Jones, who, by the way, didn't get the start until he was 5 years into his career because he sat there patiently waiting his time in a way that would never happen today, as you well know.
Well, we didn't have enough teams back then. Now we have too many teams.
Yeah, well, we certainly
back then, if Sam Jones is coming off the bench, we probably needed more teams. But
and KC, that those 2 came off the bench for 3 years together, and I mean it was. But then Sam, so just to show you what we were missing, when he gets to start, he scores 25 a game, and Sam, Sam had a 51-point playoff game. He had a 47-point playoff game. Sam Jones was a great player.
And also probably the most clutch guy of that era, other than Jerry West.
Yeah, they ran. Yeah, right. He was because he just was oblivious, and they claim. The players, that Heinsohn, has had this conversation many times, and Cousy, that he really was kind of reluctant. He's so self-effacing that it wasn't like he was demanding the ball. It was, oh God, I got to do it again. All right,
I've been fortunate enough to run into some of the best players and be able to have conversations with them, and the respect for McHale has always Barkley thinks McHale is the best player he's ever played against. Magic Johnson thinks McHale is the best power forward of all time. He would put him over Duncan like anybody. It's really interesting to me that the people who actually played against McHale put him on a much higher level than maybe people 30 years from now when they just look at the stats. I don't think they'll be able to get it.
Well, let me tell you something. When he retired in 93, he took. He's the last forward who posted up anywhere near that level. He just took that with him. Nobody's come close to being a post-up player. Duncan's good, but Duncan, and by the way, I would rank Duncan as the greatest. And
I would too.
My great pet peeve, is the most. Not only is he the most overrated superstar, but the most overrated basketball player of all time is Karl Malone. I will have that argument with you anytime.
And that's somebody that gets slammed when you talk to some of the stars. They're Karl Malone, Stockton. Yeah, Stockton had a huge impact on him, obviously, and he choked when it mattered. Like, you'll hear those guys will talk about that now because they don't care.
I contend that steal that Michael Jordan made on him in that playoff game from behind. There's no, he's not stealing it from Bird. He's not stealing it from McHale. Right. He's not stealing it from Duncan. I can tell you that much. But but Carmelo was oblivious. Anyway, I don't want to turn this one a complete Malone bashing.
So
I'd rather talk positively about McHale. You're right. Barkley has always said that, and McHale, think about it, as 6'11" with these ridiculously long arms, he could post up on either side of the basket. He didn't care. Left box, right box. He had the phenomenal up and under move that could go either way. He had the turnaround jumper with extraordinary range. When he took that big first step away, he just about fell off the court with that turnaround jumper. He had the jump hook. And he had what he called the swinging gate move, that phenomenal up and under move. I mean, it was the complete clinic, and at pivot, and really the only superior he had was, of course, the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with the hook shot. But other than that, no forward. And Larry those two, they were like competing rival empires, and Larry felt that Kevin didn't, in his eyes, work, he could have been an MVP if he worked harder, and Kevin felt that Larry needed to get a life, a little bit.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Kevin would say, what does he think? I don't, these moves came out of nowhere. And I watched Kevin practice. I mean, dozens of days when we had access, and you'd go to practice and you'd do anything. You get there an hour early and you sit and shoot the breeze with the guys in the locker room, and you stay for practice, and then you stay after practice, and I retrieve basketballs with guys, and all that stuff. And Kevin McHale worked hard after practice a lot, and perfected those moves. One day, Bill, you'll love this one. This is so funny. One day he says, "Hey, Bob, come here. I want to show you something." I said, "What?" He says, "He doesn't move." And he said, "See that?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I can't use that in the game." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I know they'll call traveling. It's not, but they will."
Wow.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah. I mean, Bill, the experience I had, I would never, wouldn't trade 1 millisecond of it, to do it in those days. Today, that opportunity does not exist for anybody. I feel badly. If somebody loved the game as much as I did that covers it today, they will not have the same leisure of satisfaction because they won't be allowed to get into it the way I was allowed to get into it.
And that changed basically 1990s once these guys started making a lot of money. They became mini corporations.
It also started the two worst things that ever happened to the media in the NBA are the charter flights and the Chicago Bulls. And the charter flights self-evident, and when you no longer travel with them, it changed everything. And then the Bulls, because Michael's out of necessity, they had to travel as rock stars. We understand that they had circumstances that had never before existed in the league. The Celtics had a little element of that, but it was manageable. It was no problem, But the Bulls was out of control. They had to travel in a certain way. And then when they built the Berto Center, they built it in a way that you could not even see where they parked or who was coming in, and you weren't allowed in practice to start with. And it was a complete official separation. It was the Berlin Wall of media for the media, and everyone has since imitated it. Everyone, and so it's just totally changed. And so now what constitutes relationships and just number one, and what constitutes having fun in the business, number two, are just totally different and unattainable compared to what we had.
Well, back in your era, like, you would go to the game, you would file your game story, and then the Celtics would go out to dinner where, like, the Scotch and Sirloin. You would go with them.
I'd go with them on the road, not at home.
Yeah,
on the road,
not at home.
Night,
Okay.
after every game, I'd say, "Where are you going?" And they'd tell me the place, and then I'd meet them up, and then we close it up, and that's the gospel truth, and that was every night, and that's the way it was. And
it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, and so I hear. Oh my God! I mean, it was.
Plus, people will love this because now that everybody has League Pass, everybody has seen a Celtics home game, and they have seen Tommy Heinsohn do his thing with the referees.
Yeah.
You covered Tommy Heinsohn when he was a title-winning NBA coach.
Oh, of course. Well, he was. I was 23 years old covering the team in 1969, and he was on his first year on the job himself. Had never coached one thing in his life. He was in his post-career. He retired in '65 due to bad knees, and he split his time. He was a prize-winning and a very high-powered insurance salesman, and then he did color on the side for the Celtics when they got a TV deal going in in mid '60s. So. When he was named coach after Russell quit in '69, named coach by Red Auerbach, he had never coached one thing, never coached a bitty league game, never. So he was on the OJT. Red was kind of nursing him through that a little bit. Meanwhile, I needed him to as the coach, and he needed the biggest media outlet in New England. He figured it was good policy to make nice with the envoy from the Boston Globe, because we were. This is long before talk radio or internet, and nobody was touching us as a power of media influence in New England, and so I was the envoy, and so he spent a lot of time with me, and we had a lot of cups of coffee and a lot of time, and I learned a lot about the league and from him, and me concurrently spent time with the players, and inevitably, Bill, there was a conflict, and it got very uncomfortable because he thought that he owned me and that I owed him loyalty, and he used to tell me I was being schnookered by the players. He loved that word, and of course I was looking at it totally differently, and inevitably there was a conflict, but it took 7 years for it to play out before I decided I needed to get off here and take a breather. But I got 7 wonderful years in covering Havlicek and Nelson, particularly those two, and Cowens, the incomparable personality, the greatest, the most amazing personality I ever covered was Dave Cowens.
My dad's favorite player. You said you grew up watching Wilt, or at least you did in college, and I, by any calculation, one of the most polarizing athletes of all time. Nobody under 40 really, knows the deep history unless you read about it. LeBron seems like he's in a lot of ways in that same kind of spot. Like anything he does, he can't win. When he doesn't do something, people say, he doesn't have it. He's not a winner. All that stuff. Do you see the Wilt LeBron parallels?
That's an interesting one. Wilt had the big lament. Nobody loves Goliath. That was always his cop out. And he couldn't win because he was the biggest, strongest guy, and he was expected to win, and people mocked him, and all that. And LeBron's just it doesn't have that to fall back on. It's a little trickier to put your finger on what the essence of it is. But I don't think it existed until he went in any degree. Even after that colossal flop against the Celtics 2 years ago, and the bad publicity emanating from Game 5, if he had stayed in Cleveland and re-upped, do you think that would be so long forgotten? And whatever was happening,
probably.
I think and then you wonder, is it? I'm just throwing this out there. I think about this occasionally. Is it all about the not just that he went to Miami, but is it all about the one night, the foolish rally, the foolish greeting? Is it all about that just immediately turned everybody off, and not 1, not 2, not 3? No, is that it? Is that because I don't know? Absent that, if it would have been so bad, I don't know.
I think it was, in my opinion, a bunch of things teamed together. You had the fact that he no-showed the last 2 games of that Celtics series. Then you had the way he handled the decision, and the fact that he basically broke up with the city of Cleveland on television, on live television, and then combined with the parade the next day, which was just...
Yeah, I think, of course, the decision itself was appalling, the whole thing.
It seemed like those 3 things together, and then I think I think this is just an American thing. I think people reach a point where they just go, who's this guy?
The funny thing about the decision, during the finals, I'm talking to Jim Gray, and I get along fine with Jim Gray. I've known him, many, 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 many years, and he's telling me this plan, and I'm thinking, oh, it's not going to happen. So I didn't take it seriously. Just tell me. They told me to outline what he wants to do. He wants to broker this thing. He wants to do it on TV. He wants to be, and I'm going, oh, fuck. I don't know. I just didn't even take it seriously. My God, then what happened? And so anyway.
But I would say,
I just keep going back to that.
With Wilt, I do think if you're going to talk about comparisons, like Wilt was this overpowering physical force. And I think LeBron has a lot of that. Like especially when you watch LeBron in person, you think like, oh my God, this guy is just more of an athlete than anybody else I'm watching on the floor right now. It just seems like he should score. He should put up a 40, 15, 15 every night as you're watching him. Obviously, that's impossible, but maybe that's part of it too.
Well, it's arguable that it's at that size. In the mid-size, he's the greatest physical specimen, the greatest instrument. I like to put. I used to say this about George McGinnis. George McGinnis 40 years ago was the greatest instrument physically that to play basketball I had ever seen, and I think a lot of people agreed to that. Very similar body, a little more overtly cut, muscular. Even LeBron's very, very, very strong, but McGinnis is just ridiculous. And, of course, he had all kinds of psychological hang-ups as time went on, and culminating in this inability to shoot free throws, and that's really what got him out of basketball, because he didn't want to go to the line. But anyway, we've seen something like that before with him, but this is a whole other modern level of expertise. There's no question. Yeah, when he's got it going, I mean, and it's an amazing package because the strength is phenomenal. He's like a giant, huge cat, and then the passing is the closest thing to Bird Magic that we've seen. I mean, I will always think of him in terms of look away passes first.
Yeah.
And it's he's an extraordinary passer. He's right there with Larry and Magic, and that's why I still, this whole conversation. This is what I love. I don't know where I'm not going to resolve anything about what I'm about to say. I'm going to kind of just throw up there food for thought kind of thing. One thing about this, I'm digressing. One thing about this game that I love is it has a will of its own. The essence of basketball prevails over every single person or force or team or individual that has ever come across it, and the game prevails. And what do I mean by that? Well, when you watch Kareem in his prime and some nights, and you said, why don't they throw him the ball every time? Nobody can stop him. He should get 100 points, and he can get 100. He can average 60 a game if you give him the ball enough. And then you watch and you realize that just can't work that way. The dynamics of the game. The other players would get bored. He'd get tired. It doesn't work that way. There's a calibration. There's a calibration necessary on offense in this game always, that the 5 men, the one ball, the restriction of time, the court confines, all these things come into play. The game has an essence that must be honored. And so what I'm getting at is I don't know yet that it's a good idea to put to put LeBron and Wade on the same team. I just think it's counterproductive. And when Wade sat down, and he's great, and he may have a better brain and heart for the game than LeBron. But when he sat down and LeBron was able to go back to being LeBron without worrying about any kind of homage whatsoever to Wade, he was awesome.
Right.
It was awesome. And it's no knock on Wade. It was a tribute to the game of basketball, in my opinion, if you know what I'm talking about. And that's what I love about the game. And the game prevails. And so constructing a proper team, the best teams that we've seen in history, did not. They had some great individuals, but they were all fitting together in a way that worked. The 85-86 Celtics, the 86-87 Lakers, which I believe, had it ever taken place methodic, if you could have put the 85-86 Celtics against the 86-87 Lakers once they acquired Michael Thompson, would have. Those are the 2 best teams of all time, and that would have been the greatest series. They should have barnstormed for to eternity. Those 2 teams. That would have been the greatest. There never would be better basketball conceivable than what those 2 teams could have played against each other. A healthy Walton and once the Lakers got Thompson, they were whole, and they had it all done. When I'm talking about, you got somebody come off the bench with certain components. I mean, the Heat don't even come close to fulfilling any of those fantasies. Nobody today does, And you're right. One reason is that there's too many teams. But I just think it's a lot of it. The AAUization of basketball. It is just crippling. It is absolutely insidious in every way that what it's done to basketball.
I agree with every point you just made, but then I realized, I grew up reading you and listening to you, so you probably shaped my basketball DNA. So any opinion you have, I'm probably going to have as well. The alpha dog thing is a really interesting point, though, because we even saw that Miami Celtics opening night, the first time Wade and LeBron played, and there was a little bit of a dueling banjos component to it, which goes back to where you're talking about the calibration.
Yeah.
I don't see how they ever solve it, but then you think, man, if Dallas goes cold for 2 more minutes in Game 5, Miami wins the title. So then we're not talking about a calibration. So then it's I don't know what to think with this team.
Yeah,
I don't think they're any better than they were last year.
They're still the favorites in my mind this year. I mean, I like the Bulls. I really want to like the Bulls. I think if they get all their pieces together, finally, right now they're playing shorthanded. Even with Rozier playing, they don't have Hamilton, and maybe they, talk about. Can you imagine how? Close your eyes for a minute. Fantasize Ray Allen being the 5th man instead of Rip Hamilton on that team.
I don't see. I think because they went all in on Rip Hamilton, I don't think they can do that.
No, they can't. But just think they could replace Rip Hamilton with Ray Allen instead.
It would be. Come on. It would be all over.
Yeah.
To me, I look at everybody, and Chicago seems like they had the same issues they had last year. They only have one guy in the last 4 minutes who scares you, and then Miami has that same. They just seem like they get tight. There's something.
Yeah,
kind of off about how they're doing it.
They're going to have to get over that, and maybe they can't. And who's that open the door for? I don't know. I can't imagine.
Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know. You'd like to once again that can't. You and I seem to be in agreement that Oklahoma City must augment this. They've got to find another scorer. They cannot do it this way.
They need somebody who will scare the hell out of the other team, standing in the corner as they're worrying about Durant and Westbrook. And if they can spread it out, I think that's the team. But, I had Bird on the podcast 2 weeks ago, and obviously a career highlight. And he was saying how if he could pick any player to play with, he would pick Kobe. And this, of course, turned into a national story because it was basically like, oh, he's going to pick Kobe and not LeBron. And nobody really kind of understood why he said it that way, which I was a little disappointed by. Like, it's kind of stunk that his words, I felt like, got twisted around and became a story that wasn't what he meant. And, I don't know what your take is on this, but my feeling was like, I asked him, who would you want to play with? Who would you want to grab from this current era and put on the 86 Celtics? And he said Kobe because Kobe wants to win.
Yes.
And you said this earlier with the McHale Bird, that weird kind of rivalry they had. Bird, the thing that he respected the most was guys who were just obsessed with winning, and that's all they cared about. And I think he looks at Kobe and he sees like, that's a guy who's kind of wired in the same way like me. He's a maniac like I was. I mean, wouldn't you agree that's what he meant?
Positively. The way I interpreted this when I heard about this having occurred, and I totally understand it because he's looking at LeBron's. Well, I mean, I don't have to explain it out. We both know. Yes, it's so evident to me that that's what he meant, and I can understand why he would have said that because And I was saying, I was just trying to clarify. I want to clarify one thing. We're talking about the whole juxtaposition of Bird and McHale, and Bird's viewpoint of McHale not being serious enough. He didn't grasp that that people someone could have a personality where he could laugh and joke up to the opening tip, and then get serious. Which is Kevin could do. And even during the game, make wisecracks and the other. Now, Larry liked to do a little trash talking every now and then. We all know that, but Kevin could. He just could turn it on and off, and don't think Kevin didn't want to win. Just the way this is Larry's interpretation. I'm not saying Larry was right about this. So that's all.
So
anyway,
he said
Bryant thing versus Kobe. I mean, versus LeBron. Perfectly evident to me what Larry would mean, and that doesn't surprise me in the least. He would say it.
Well, plus he said LeBron was the best player in the league by far. Was another quote for his. So it's like he was like, by far he's the best basketball player in the league. So to me, it's like I don't see how LeBron's getting slammed that whole thing. Where do you stand on Kobe in the all-time pantheon? He certainly violates a lot of the rules that you care about as a basketball fan.
Similar though. First of all, in every way he's the facsimile Michael. In every single way, he's the facsimile Michael. I mean, in terms of the range of skill, the size, the range of skill, and even a different kind of evolution because Michael came out of a college background and Kobe comes out at 18 years old and it's all different. But still, in the end, the cold-blooded nature of it, the range of skill, the need to figure out how to calibrate your game, that's that word again, with everybody, took Michael longer than I thought it might have and should have. I will always maintain they could have won a year or two earlier, but Michael just wasn't ready to concede the game supremacy that I spoke of a few minutes earlier, and he thought he could do it too much himself, and you can't to a degree. You have to figure out a way to live with the others and get the most out of the others, and he finally figured that out. And Kobe went through the whole thing with, in the beginning he owed a lot to Shaq. They're winning. Shaq was the key guy, not him. But in time, it became evident that, and I'll give Jerry Buss credit for choosing Kobe over Shaq. I thought it was ridiculous, and he was wrong. Because Shaq basically started mailing it in more often than not as soon as he got out of L.A. But he did get one more title out. I give him that. But anyway, I think the all-time, like I always said, the all-time team was very simple. 4/5 of it was a no-brainer. You can pick any of the three centers you want, and I concede that you have a right to pick among Russell, Chamberlain, and Kareem. I will take Russell, but that's fine. Then the forwards, the guards were no-brainer. It was Magic and Michael, and the one forward was Larry, and I would argue the other forward is Duncan. Well, now you got Kobe. What do you do with Kobe? You just make him automatically the sixth best player? It's pretty hard to ignore Kobe now in this argument, isn't it? And how many people would you put ahead of him?
I had, when I did the paperback of my book, I had Kobe 8th and Duncan 7th. And I just think Duncan, how many years does he have left now? Maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I mean, he's clearly at the end here.
The problem is here we got 2 things here. We're going to go, we're talking about trying to go by position. Now, are you going to put a team for position, or are we going to identify, as you did, the top X players 1 through X is a different matter because 3 of the top, 1, 2, 3, 3 of the top 6 or worst 7 players, maybe 3 of the top 5 players, frankly, are those 3 centers. I mean,
right.
That's the fact. Russell, Russell, Wilt, and Kareem are at the worst 3 of the best 7 players in the history of the league, and they're at the same position. So that's a different argument. Obviously, they're trying to construct a center, 2 forwards, 2 guards kind of thing, and that's where it gets hairy.
Well, maybe you flip it around. Like I think Kobe's now the 3rd best guard of all time.
Yeah,
I think he's past Oscar. The breadth of his career is going to play at least 20 years. Yeah. He's going to score almost 40,000 points.
I agree with you.
5 titles. Like there's too much going on for him at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Although I know it pains me, because I was a big turnaround guy on Oscar because Oscar is such a P-word guy. And wasn't is. He's a very unhappy, bitter guy.
Right.
But my God, he was the clinic. I had a basketball mentor named Frank Power, who was an assistant coach at BC, but really one of the most caring and knowledgeable and passionate basketball people I've ever met. I learned a lot from him. And he used to say that Oscar Robertson is, if you want to know how to shoot, watch Oscar. If you want to know how to dribble, watch Oscar. You want to know how to rebound, watch Oscar. You want to know how to pass, watch Oscar. He was the individual clinic, and the thing about Oscar was the consistency. Oscar probably had more 30 and 10 games in this run of and than anyone has ever had, and just night after night.
Right.
They never gave. It just never. There was no. It was not 41 night and 17 the next. No, that was not Oscar. So anyway,
but I mean,
right, Kobe, you have to give Kobe his due. I have to grudgingly do it.
Much like Kobe, Oscar not a delight to play with.
No, and Oscar dominated the ball. And he dictated the whole thing, and there's no
yelled at teammates.
When he decided, when he got his chance to get the ring, he didn't blow it. With the Bucks, and the second year there they won, and he just after that he was just too old. I mean, by the time they played the Celtics in '74, the young Don Chaney was just physically too much for him night after night. Even with 1 day off, it wasn't enough for Oscar to recoup, and this young 6'5" with the 8-foot arms and the biceps was just too much for him. But that was 14th year in the league. What the hell?
So you have Kobe's in the top 7.
Yeah.
With you don't have Shaq in the top 10.
No, I don't. Oh no, Shaq's clearly in the next level after. I mean, he's not. He's in the top 5 centers. He may be the 4th best center, but he's not in the top 3. I'm sorry, no way.
All right. And when you're looking at the current crop of guys. Other than Kobe, like maybe the under 30 guys, who are we looking at 20 years from now saying they had the best career? Are we saying LeBron? Are we saying Durant?
Well,
maybe
Durant, I think
Rose?
on that, I gotta, I'm frantically looking up. Hit me off the top of my head. I'm looking at teams here so I can get some perspective here in a minute. Certainly Durant's on his way to being an all-time player. I love Durant. There's nothing not to like about Durant. Rose is certainly, I think, on a path to be. I've been infatuated with Rose since I first saw him in college, in person. You got to see him in person. This is one of those things. You've got to see it. You can't believe the explosiveness until you see it in person. Would you agree to that?
I would 100% agree. And I think I'll tell you another thing. Watching Chris Paul for the last, although they haven't been home for 2 weeks, but he's different in person because it's the command. It's the command of the court, the command of the teammates. Just how he handles the ball, and he does stuff you just don't see other point guards do. Like, he'll get in the paint, but he doesn't – most guys will go in the paint, and they feel like they have to do something. He'll go in the paint and just dribble back out. Be like, I didn't like that. I'm going to get that again in 5 seconds. And he's just has such a nasty edge to him, too, which I love, obviously. And just complete command. He's in charge. He's the orchestrator. Everybody who does everything on his team does it with the consent of him. And that's what I like about watching him. And I don't think that translates on TV as well.
Another guy we can't exaggerate how good he's been is Nash.
Oh, yeah, especially this year. This might be his best year. His team stinks.
God, yeah, he's still going to get you a 38 if you need it.
It's unbelievable.
I'm just looking quickly, and Nowitzki's an incredible phenomenon. I mean,
that's a guy I had in my book. I had him in like the high 30s, and then he wins the title, and now I think you have to say he passed Malone and Barkley.
Oh yeah, Malone. Well, you know how I feel about Malone.
Right.
But so that's different. I admit to my almost pathological detestation of his game. I hate it. Barkley, I love Barkley, but I take Nowitzki over Barkley now.
Malone versus Elvin Hayes. Who did you dislike?
I take Malone. Better person.
Elvin was your least favorite. I actually dropped Elvin in my book because you hated him so much.
I would find ways to knock Elvin when they weren't even playing them. It's kind of like Red Sox fans sitting there going, Yankees suck, during a Pops concert, I mean, I would admit to I despised Elvin Hayes. Of course, part of that was he actually played my hero Cowens very well. That drove me crazy. I have to admit that. I'm human. What can I tell you? I had foibles.
One young guy for you to check out in person is Irving on the Cavs.
Okay, good. I'm anxious. A lot
of Kevin Johnson.
It was a little truncated version of the Kyrie Irving.
A lot of Kevin Johnson.
Ooh, okay.
You'll see it. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Guy, he's not going to go down in history, with these guys. I don't know that the Hall of Fame beckons. Although as an international, that's a possibility and a probability. But there's no. I'm going to say this: just aesthetics. We're talking aesthetics, okay? And in terms of and as well as efficiency, there is no big man in the league I'd rather watch than Gasol playing well. The game Gasol just played. The game he played against the Celtics the other night,
it's brilliant.
Was very similar to many of the games he played against them in the finals 2 years ago, when he was robbed of his rightful MVP award.
Killed us.
There's nobody else that can play the way he plays. With the breadth of skill that he has at 7 feet is unmatched by any other current player in the league.
And it's interesting you brought that up because they might panic trade him because the owner's son, who kind of runs the Lakers now, who loves buying him, is afraid to trade Bynum. And I have a feeling you can get Gasol with the right offer. And then you look at the Celtics now. I don't know how much sense he makes at age 31.
No, I mean,
but
I love him. I just love him, and I don't understand why people don't appreciate him. Except now, I know he didn't come through in the playoffs last year, and the only thing I can surmise on that, I learned many years ago. I learned with these pro athletes, when in doubt, go back to basics. So when something inexplicable happens, and if it's not, number one would be injury. If guys just stop playing. But number two, something going on at home, something in their personal life. I don't know what, but I'm willing to bet anything that Gasol was a troubled person during the playoffs for some, and it just reflected that because his skill level is absolutely unarguable.
One other guy we should mention, just for the have to see them in person versus watching TV, is Russell Westbrook. Athletically is just incredible.
He is ridiculous
in person. Like there's nobody. I don't know if there's been a guard quite like him for what is almost like a miniature LeBron, like with his explosiveness. Like a 6'3" version.
He's something, and that's a formidable duo, and yet it's still not enough. It's not going to be enough, and as we both agree, and Harden's fine. Harden's in the role he's got, it's perfect. They need one more guy at least that has to offer a threat, and then we can talk about them.
Last question. How much longer are you doing this? You've been doing this forever. I mean, it seems like you could do this until you're 100.
There's no secret now. The secret's out. I'm planning on going to the London Olympics and then saying goodbye.
Really?
Yeah. There'll be a part-time me. There'll be an afterlife, but it won't be a full-time afterlife. And I'll sum it up very simply. And there's a lot of reasons, obviously, and no one ever has one reason. But I really and truly believe that my time is come and gone. That the dynamics of the business of what it takes to what it means to be involved in the sports business with all the tweeting and the blogging and all the stuff and the different an audience with a different taste. I'm not comfortable. I'm not. It's not me anymore, and I'm not comfortable. And I've had very happily say I've had a great run, and I think it's time for somebody else to have their run. And I'm not going to go away and sit in a closet, but I got a lot of things I hope it will materialize. But I want to be able to pick and choose that. I want to be able to do it on a classic, on your own terms kind of thing. So I'm planning on going to London because I love the Olympics, and then basically shutting it down or scaling it way back, put it that way. But that's the plan.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but
thank you.
So you're going to give up?
I want people to say that. I want to go. Bill, I've studied this. I've made a science of this in my mind for years, watching this, and I'm I talk the talk for a long time, and I got to walk the walk. I mean, I see people hanging around. I say, what is he doing there? Why is he here? What is the matter with him? And you read it and you go, oh no, God, that wasn't worth it. And I want people to say. I want to still be able to hit. Maybe I can't throw 98. I can't be 90. I can't be the 99 Pedro. Hitting the black with 4 pitches. But I think I can get up to 94 and 5 every now and then. And I want people to be wanting. To be missing that. That would make me feel good.
So you're going to hang up the Globe column and possibly still be on TV?
Yeah, well, that if they want me on TV, that's great. We haven't even explored that yet. I assume I'd like to think that they'll still find a value, and I'll still be able to. Hanging it up means I might do a part-time thing, and that's good. That's fine. But in terms of being a prominent person and being out there, and I want to have a mobility. I don't want to. That's the whole key. My wife and I are both in good health. We have some plans, and time to get going with them.
I like the symmetry of the 2012 Olympics being the last thing for you because, I think the one thing that anybody in the business would say about you is nobody loved covering events more than you. There might have been people who loved it as much, but nobody loved it more than you.
Well, I appreciate that thought, and I am looking forward to that. This will be my 11th Olympics, and I've done every one since the Dream Team Olympics, and I like the whole rhythm of it. I like the whole thing, and so it's a perfect. It's for me. It couldn't be a better, and it's a perfect way for me to, to go out. So. And
also might be the most talented Olympic team we've had.
Yeah, how much? Once again, I'm not going to be. I started out in '92 as almost exclusively basketball, and this one now I'm broad. Now I won't get to do all the basketball, but I certainly, when they're playing for that gold against. I would guess Spain.
Yes.
I'm guessing that. Then I plan to be there.
Although Spain somehow has a Baca, which we need to investigate how that happened. How did you get a Baca, Spain? They must have traded for him.
Out of Switzerland. I don't know that one either.
Right. All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear about that, but I'm glad that you're going out on your own terms. I know you had a huge impact on my career and wanted to do this for a living, so thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. I enjoyed the chat very much.
Yeah, and hopefully come on during the playoffs.
Very good, Bill.
All right, Bob Ryan, thank you.
So long now. Bye-bye.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the B.S. Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
Unfortunately, that's it for Bill today, and football's regular season is over. But don't worry, there's still plenty to celebrate, because Subway Footlong Nation Appreciation is on. To thank you for making footlongs famous, Subway's giving away thousands of prizes every day, including free footlongs for life. Head to Subway and grab a 30-ounce drink or Doritos Nacho Cheese Chips for game codes. Then, visit Subway.com online or on your mobile device to enter your code for a chance to win big. We're giving away a prize a minute, so hurry in. Subway, where winners eat.